The American Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, called for a humanitarian pause yesterday, something for which your leaders also called. Can you tell me what exactly is the practical difference between a humanitarian pause and a ceasefire?
Yes, a ceasefire, and this was Keir's argument in the week that you talked about, that a ceasefire freezes a conflict. In this case, it would leave Hamas fighters, weapon systems, command centres in place, and it would leave them in place and able to mount similar terror attacks that we saw on October the 7th. And his argument is also that for the aims that we all want to achieve, which is a reduction in civilian casualties, more aid getting into Gaza, the chance for hostages to come out, and more space to see further diplomacy, it's humanitarian pauses or a breaks in fighting that are most likely to be, as Martin Griffiths, the UN aid chief, has said, the most viable option. And I think we must all welcome the indication from the Israeli Defence Force today that there may be a 4-hour break in fighting, a humanitarian pause, if you like, to allow people to move more safely south and away from the main part of fighting in Gaza.
So the essential difference between the humanitarian pause and the ceasefire is that the humanitarian pause is one-sided, that it's basically what the Israelis do, but Hamas doesn't have to observe it.
No, it's a break in fighting that allows some of the things that we all want to see, especially the alleviation of Palestinian suffering, to take place. And in the end, what matters is what stands the best chance of working. And in a conflict like this, small steps can lead to bigger breakthroughs. So that's why Keir Starmer's been arguing for humanitarian pauses. Keir Starmer is not a protest leader. He understands why people are calling for a ceasefire, but he believes that for those two reasons, for now, that is not the right approach.
As you know, I'm not much of a pedant, but I wanted to ask the difference here, because there are a lot of people in your party who do think it's that there is a big difference. We've heard from Anas Sarwar, Scottish leader, Andy Burnham, Sadiq Khan, 200 Labour councillors who signed a letter complaining about your leader's words. Two council leaders called on him to resign because they think you should use the words ceasefire because it is actually something different. Are you going to at all bend on this one? Are you going to pay any attention to what they're saying?
No, Keir Starmer set out the arguments. He wants to bring people with him like a good leader, the sort of leadership we've not seen from Rishi Sunak on this. But in order to respect the absolute right that Israel has to defend itself, rescue its hostages, and take out Hamas fighters and threat for the future, and especially to try and achieve the relief of the suffering, the greater aid into Gaza, the break in the humanitarian catastrophe that we're seeing within Gaza, then pursuing pauses or humanitarian pauses or breaks in the fighting is the most practical way of doing this. And Keir Starmer will be looking to win those arguments, take the party with us.
We've heard that, Mr. Healey, but let me put the words reportedly of your own Scottish leader to you. He said that Sir Keir's comments lacked, I'm quoting here, humanity and empathy, and that there would need to be a repair job with Muslim voters. Do you understand how deeply this is being felt by some of your most loyal voters?
I do, and many people, not just those in Muslim communities, are horrified and heartbroken by the images that we've seen from Gaza. But the biggest imperative...
They would say you're simply ignoring that, actually.
No, not ignoring, but Keir Starmer and we are arguing that there is, in these circumstances, at this point, a better way, a more practical way, and that is to try and achieve breaks in the fighting that allow some of the relief of the suffering. And in the longer run, Keir Starmer in his speech also pointed the way in the future where ceasefire may become possible, where the hostages are out, the ability of Hamas to be able to attack Israel again in the future has been degraded. Circumstances in the future that may allow us to achieve the ceasefire that we'll all want to see. The question at the moment is, for now, what is the best, what is the most practical, what is the most realistic way of getting some of the aid in to Gaza, some of the relief for the Palestinians, and a reduction in the innocent Palestinian casualties that are at the heart of our concern about this fight.
How do you respond to your critics within the party who simply say, we've heard all that, but actually what's happening here is that you've made a cynical calculation that you can afford to lose quite a lot of Muslim votes that won't cost you any seats, but you need to show that you've shed the taint of anti-Semitism?
I utterly reject that. The starting point is the fundamental principle that any nation, ours or Israel or any other nation, has to defend itself when it comes under such a catastrophic, horrific terrorist attack. And to safeguard that right, you must uphold the scope for Israel to pursue those Hamas terrorists in Gaza. They must meet their duties under international law in doing so. And meanwhile, whatever can be done, and this is why the United States, the European Union, as well as Labour and the UK government have all been arguing that in these circumstances, a humanitarian pause is the most practical way of getting any sort of relief in the conflict.
OK, can I move on to what is happening here? I've spoken this morning to Deputy Prime Minister about the demonstrations on streets of London and other cities, police officers injured, chanting on the tube, and so on. There's a question being raised about whether the march that is planned for next Saturday, Armistice Day, should go ahead. And the Deputy Prime Minister gave, I think, as clear a signal as he could, that he would rather it didn't go ahead, that it was banned. What's your feeling about that?
This is a difficult balance, isn't it? In a democracy like ours, the right of free speech and protest is fundamental. But there has to be a respect for the remembrance service, for all cenotaphs and memorials, for the 2-minute silence on Saturday, not just the remembrance parade on Sunday. That must be protected. And I hope the police, and it'll be an operational decision for them, will be able to work with the the Palestinian protest march organisers, as the indications seem to suggest, that the march will be at a later time, in a different place in London, so that any sort of conflict which would be utterly unacceptable doesn't arise.
But if the police decided that they didn't want it to go ahead, the Labour Party would not be upset by this?
Well, if the police decided they didn't want it to go ahead under what is the 1986 legislation, it would be for the Home Secretary to take that decision. I hope that won't be necessary. I believe it should be possible to manage both the proper respect and the conduct of the remembrance parade around the cenotaph, and allow the protesters concerned about what's going on in Gaza and the loss of Palestinian lives to undertake their protest at a different time in a different part of London.